We've all seen the grand victory feasts in films, the drinking horns raised high, the sounds of joyous laughter echoing, and gold piled in heaps. Yet, the story that truly begins after the fires have burned down, the song has faded, and the warriors are long gone, is often left untold. It's the story of the noble women, the queens, the princesses, the daughters of chieftains, whose lives were forever changed by the violence and bloodshed that followed the fall of their halls. These women, once secure in their positions of power, were now the spoils of war, their fates not a mere afterthought but a carefully orchestrated strategy of conquest. This isn't a tale of romance or of rescue. This is a narrative about what transpired when the celebration ended, and the true cost of defeat began to be realized. We will delve into the lives of 7 such women. If you value a well-researched and documented history like this, consider subscribing. It's the best way to support our work. Also, let us know in the comments where you're tuning in from. This script is based on historical research and factual sources, including the Annals of Alter and the Lexa Saga. Now, let's get into the story. The entry in the Annals of Alter is short, stark, and written with the precision of a ledger. For the year 821, it states simply, Etir was plundered by the heathens and they carried off a great number of women into captivity. What is now known as Howth, situated on a prominent peninsula overlooking the northern approach to Dublin Bay, was an important strategic location. The raid that took place was not an accidental strike but a deliberate move to acquire resources, and in the 9th century, one of the most valuable resources was people. These women, their names and heritages erased in an instant, were reclassified under Norse law as thrs, the lowest possible rank in society, akin to property rather than people. Their journey into slavery began on the decks of a Viking longship, tightly packed with other captives like livestock. The voyage itself served as a test. Only the strongest survived the brutal conditions of the North Atlantic crossing. These women's eventual destination was likely the rapidly growing Viking port of Glynn, later known as Dublin. There, they were assessed, sorted, and sold. A healthy young woman could be sold for a hefty sum, between 12 and 20 ounces of silver, which was about the annual yield of a small farm. Some women were bought by Viking settlers in Ireland, others were shipped to markets in Hedby in Denmark, to Burka in Sweden, or even transported along the river routes to the vast slave economies of the Byzantine Empire and the Abbasid Caliphate. The skills these women once held, weaving, healing, or other crafts that might have been highly valued in their homelands, now merely served to increase their sale price. But their individual identities? Those were stripped away, erased from the historical record. They were seen as a collective number, a mere statistic in the economic machinery of the Viking world. Confiscated. Inventory catalogued. Silenced. 2 centuries after the events, the Lexa Saga introduced us to one of these captives by name, Melora, the daughter of an Irish king, Murkjartan. Around the year 956, her peaceful life was shattered when Viking raiders struck, capturing her and taking her to Norway where she was put up for sale. Melora caught the eye of Hoskold Dalakolan, a wealthy Icelandic chieftain, while he was on a trading voyage authorized by King Haon of Norway. Hoskold was captivated by her beauty and dignified presence, asking the merchant selling her about her name. The merchant, a trader named Gilly, claimed ignorance. Undeterred, Hoskold bought her for 3 marks of silver, a considerable sum, far more than the price of a prime milk cow. This purchase wasn't merely for her body. It was an investment in her silence. For years, Melora remained silent, playing her part in her captivity as a concubine to Hoskold, bearing him a son named Olaf. Those around her, including Hoskold, assumed she was mute. Yet, this silence was not born of disability, it was a desperate, quiet act of defiance. A way for Melora to hold on to some semblance of control over herself in a world where she had none. The truth of her identity emerged only by accident. One day, Hoskold overheard Melora speaking to their young son in Gaelic, teaching him her native language. She revealed that her father was Murkjartan, the King of Ireland. Though her status within Hoskold's household improved slightly upon the revelation, she was never freed. She remained a captive princess, a woman who had been silenced for years, her identity only discovered by chance. Her son, Olaf, would go on to become a powerful chieftain in his own right, known as Olaf the Peacock for his opulent attire. He would later sail to Ireland, meet his grandfather, and be formally acknowledged as Irish royalty. But Melora never saw Ireland again. She died in Iceland, far from the land she was born to rule. In the fall of 870, the great heathen army, led by the infamous sons of Ragnar Lothbrok, including Ivar the Boneless and Halfdan, turned their focus on the monasteries of northern England. They descended upon the double monastery of Coldingham, located on a windswept cliff overlooking the North Sea. The abbés, Eba the Younger, understood what awaited them. Viking raids on religious houses were notorious for pillaging, murder, and the systematic sexual violence directed at the women within. To Eba and her nuns, this was a fate worse than death, a violation that would taint their souls forever. As the Viking army advanced, Eba gathered her fellow nuns in the chapter house. In a heart-wrenching act of defiance, she used a razor to slice off her own nose and upper lip, transforming her face into a grotesque mask of blood and sacrifice. She commanded the other nuns to do the same, to make themselves as horrifying as possible in an attempt to thwart the lust of the invaders. One by one, the nuns followed her example, mutilating themselves in the hope of rendering themselves undesirable to the Vikings. But when the invaders broke through the monastery's defenses, they were met not by frightened women, but by a solemn, determined group of women who had chosen to disfigure themselves. The Vikings, enraged by the sight, showed no mercy. They barricaded the chapter house and set it on fire. The women were burned alive, their final act not one of surrender, but one of defiance. Their bones became one with the ash, their spirits unbroken even in death. This act of self-mutilation was not a desperate plea for survival, but a determined refusal to let the invaders claim their dignity. Each of these women's stories illustrates the brutal reality faced by the noble women of the Viking Age. These women, whose lives and identities were forever altered by the Viking raids, were not mere footnotes in the history of war. They were strategic pawns in a system that placed a high value on people, not as individuals, but as commodities. Their fates, erased and obscured by the violent events that shaped their worlds, serve as powerful reminders of the hidden costs of conquest and the price of defeat.